This presentation is a continuation of Module 3 for Health 320, Windows, Files and Folders, and OneDrive. If you have not yet watched the first part of this presentation, please see the links that were provided via email and in D2L, and watch Part 1 before watching this one. Thanks very much. In Windows, we use File Explorer as a means to browse all of the volumes we have and the folders that are connected to your PC. You can browse to the volumes folders in order to find a specific file, or you can also use shortcuts to take you to specific locations. For example, common areas that are set up by default through Windows, such as documents or pictures. Most people tend to store data files in a user folder, so a folder that is associated specifically with their user account. If you store your files in your user folder, it helps you to maintain privacy, particularly when you're sharing a computer with other people. Shortcuts such as documents or pictures point to an instance of those folders specifically for the user. So, for example, if I have a user account that's Lynn, there will be a version of pictures that are Lynn's pictures. There will be a version of documents that are Lynn's documents. If another user creates an account on that PC, it will create a new documents folder and a new pictures folder under that new user's ID, specifically for that new user to use. When we want to access File Explorer, the easiest way to do so is via the folder icon that shows up in the taskbar. Let's take a look at some File Explorer terminology. File Explorer consists of two panes. The first is the navigation pane. It has shortcuts to make the locations active. You can see in this image that this PC is currently highlighted. If you were to click on the Documents shortcut, for example, it would make your Documents folder active. Similarly, if you clicked on the Pictures shortcut, it would make your Pictures active. The second area is the File List pane, and it shows the contents of whatever location is active. So in the image, this PC is currently the active shortcut, and you can see it lists the things that are within that location or underneath it. If you had clicked on the Pictures shortcut in the navigation pane, in the File List pane, it would show you all of the pictures which are currently within that location. The address bar reports the path of the active location. And if you have a path that is a number of subfolders down, it would show all of the names of the folders one after another as you move down that hierarchy. An easy way to navigate is to click on any position within that hierarchy. So you can move back up to higher levels by clicking the name of that location in the address bar. Let's spend some time getting familiar with File Explorer. We're going to start out looking at the View tab in File Explorer and just go through a little bit of what there is here to look at. There are many different options available to change your views and to make it easier for you to find information. By default, your navigation pane is set up as a preview pane. And so when I have this PC selected, it shows me what is available to me under this PC. So I've got my desktop, music, documents, pictures, downloads, videos. Those are the folders that are available. It also shows the devices and drives that are available. It will show iCloud. It will show my main drive of C:, and if you remember when we talked about volumes, we mentioned that they had a letter associated with them to identify them. So in this case, this volume is C. I have a DVD drive associated with it, and it is drive D. And then I have an external hard drive, and it is E. Now, up here in the how I want to see these panes, uh, if I were to click on Details instead of Preview, you will see that over on the right-hand side, it shows me some of the details about that item. In this case, how much space is used, how much is free, the total size, and what type of file system it is, as well as how it's connected to the system. In the next area, the layout, this is where we can change how things are displayed within File Explorer. So you can select extra large icons if you want really large icons to show up, small icons, tiles. Um, you can select a list of items. So here it shows me a list of here's my 6 folders, here's my 4 devices and drives. You can also select a content view, which shows you a little more information. It shows you the date that these things were modified. You can also select a detail view, which will show you as well the size of the documents. So this gives you, again, further information. In the current view section, there are a number of things you can work with. One is the sorting. So you can sort what is showing up by name. So right now that is the default, and it's in ascending. But I could do something like sort it by total size. And now you'll see it's showing with the ones where size is not indicated at the top, but then progressively getting larger in terms of size as it goes down. You can also sort by type, file system, network location, percentage full. There's a number of different ways you can do this. You can also group things, again, according to a number of these things we've looked at. One of the other things I will mention is under the show and hide. There are a couple things here that you should be aware of that can make it easier to work with your file system. One is item checkboxes. So if you were to click on the item checkboxes, you'll see that it now puts checkboxes here beside it. And you can go in and select a number of items. This ability to do this and to check things makes it very easy to work with your system if you want to do things like move files or delete files. And we'll look at some of that in a few minutes. But remember that turning checkboxes on can help you to work with your files more easily. You can also display file name extensions. By default, it doesn't show you those in Windows anymore. Because when you look at files, the icon for them shows what kind of file it is, so whether it's an Excel file or a Word file. The other one I will show you is to look at hidden items. So if I go down to my C drive, and if I go into users, you can see that there are 3 things listed here. The one is Carta, which is the beginning of my name, which is my user directory. There's a default user and a public. If I select the box for hidden items, you'll see that a 4th item, default, has appeared. It looks slightly grayed out. It's a little lighter, which indicates that it is by default a hidden file. But if you needed to see those files, that is how you would do so. I've now moved to another directory so we can explore how to work with files, doing things like creating them, renaming them, deleting them, etc. So data files are generally created when you work in an application. So for example, if you were working in Microsoft Word, you would create a document file and save it. Windows will also let you create some types of empty data files without opening an application. It's generally safe to rename files and folders, as well as most data files. However, you should avoid renaming files or folders that are associated with applications. For example, those that you would find in your programs folder. If you do rename program-related files, you may find that the applications do stop working. So let's look first at creating a new folder. There are a number of ways you can do this. In File Explorer, if you go to the home directory, there is a button here for New Folder, and it's as easy as just clicking that. Once you've clicked it, you will see by default it's called New Folder, and it's highlighted, meaning at this point you can edit it. So I can call this Lin1, name it what I want, and hit Enter. And you'll see it's popped up to the top of the list based on how the sort is happening here. But it is created and ready for use. Another way that you can do it is to use your Control key plus your Shift key plus your N key. And you'll see that again, it is now listed a new folder. And I can give that one a name. And then the third way you can do it is take your cursor to somewhere within the folder you're working in and right click using your mouse button. And then you can come down to New, and you will see it brings you up a list of new things, and you can create a folder. And that's how you would create new folders. You will notice then when you bring yourself down into here and you've got new as an option, there are many different things listed. So for example, if I were to come down and do new Microsoft Word document, it's going to create a file of the Word.docx variety and save it. Now this is at this point a blank document, there's no data in it. And if I were to double click to open it, it would open up Microsoft Word. You would see it's given it the default name Word 1. And there is no contents, but I could edit it from here. So there may be times when it is convenient to you to create a document ahead of time. Next, let's take a look at how to rename files or folders in File Explorer. The first way to do it is using the Home tab, and you'll see under here that there is an option for rename. Notice that it's nicely colored. This is because I currently do have a file or folder selected. If I did not have anything selected, you'll notice that rename has now become grayed out because I don't have a specific file or folder that I'm wanting to work on. However, let's reselect the Word document, and to rename it, you just need to click the Rename button. You'll see that it then gives you an area where you can edit, and you can just type in whatever you want to call this. When I hit Enter to save the name of the file, you'll see that it's moved up in the order of things. This is based on the way I currently have this sorting within File Explorer. The next way that you can change the name of a file is to leave it highlighted, so you can see that it is highlighted there. And then I use the F2 button on my keyboard. Again, you can see it has now brought up the ability for me to edit it, and I can type in the new name of the file and click Enter, and the new file name is saved. The third way is by pointing at the text and clicking at it once. You don't want to point at the icon, and you don't want to double click. Either of these will result in the document opening. So let's just point at the text, click once, and you'll see that again now I can rename the file. And then the final way I will show you is with the file or folder you want to work with highlighted, right click on it, and it will bring up a mini menu. And if you look down through this menu, you will get to a rename option. Click on rename, and again, you can rename it to whatever you want it to be. Earlier in this lecture, we talked a little bit about file and folder naming. Specifically, had you go and do research from the Ryerson University's Records Management Tip Sheet. And on that sheet, you would have found guidelines for naming. Things like keeping file names short and relevant, making sure that file names go from general to specific as you navigate down the directory structure, uh, using things like a year, month, day format to maintain chronological order. So there were a number of guidelines provided that were general guidelines on organizationally the best way to handle your naming your files and folders. However, it's important to know that there are also naming guidelines that do relate to the Windows operating system, and there are limits to what you can name your files within Windows operating system. File names can be a maximum of 255 characters long. This includes letters, numbers, some symbols, and spaces. Some applications do have a limit of 255 characters for the whole path. So that means if you have a file that's 4 or 5 levels down in subdirectories, all of the names of those subdirectories count towards that 255 limit. So because of this, it's better to keep file names shorter to avoid issues with this type of naming. And be aware when you're naming folders that there may be many subfolders under them. And if there are many subfolders, it can contribute to this issue with the length of names. Periods can be used in the file names. However, keep in mind that the final period is considered part of the file extension. So in the example here, if you had a file that was called this.is.my.file, that would be considered the file name. The .docx at the end is considered the extension. Some symbols cannot be used, and this includes forward slash, backslash, the pipe symbol, question mark, asterisk, open and closed angle brackets, quotation marks, and colons. So just keep in mind these guidelines when you are naming or renaming your files and folders. When working with files and folders, you may wish to select multiple files or folders in order to work with a group of them at the same time. There are a number of ways to do this, depending on whether you want your files to be contiguous, that is, all one right after another, or whether you want non-contiguous files, which may be spaced out all over the place. If you're selecting contiguous files and folders, point to the first file you wish to select and click on it. Then hold down your Shift key and click on the bottom of the list of contiguous files. And you'll see that all of them become highlighted, and now you can work with these as a group. What happens though if the files you want are scattered around? You can still do this using your keyboard. So I'm going to click on my first file, and then I'm going to hold down the Control key and click on whatever other files I want to include. So you can see in this case, I have a file, the next one is not selected, another file, the next one is not selected, then two are selected. This is how you can select non-contiguous items. Another way we can do it, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, is if we go into View and select the Check Items boxes, we can either select them all in a row, or I can go and just select a couple of specific files to work with. Another useful tool can be found in the Home tab of your File Explorer. So in Home, if you go to the Select area, you will find three different buttons here. The first is Select All. If I click Select All, you'll see that all items in this view have been selected. This gives you a very quick way to select everything and can be especially useful if you're working in a folder that has many, many entries in it and you would normally have to scroll down through a pile of them to do a full select. You can also click on Select None and it will deselect everything that was previously selected. And then for the final button, if we had a couple things that had been selected, and then we realized, oh, it should be flipped. I should have gone the other way. There is an invert selection. And when you use this, everything that was selected will be deselected, and everything that wasn't selected will be. So it just flips it. So that's how you do the invert selection. Next, we're going to look at how to move and copy folders in Windows 10. In File Explorer, one of the things that will help make this a little easier is to have two copies of File Explorer up. That way you can display both the directory you're going from or the folder you're going from and the folder you're going to. There are a few ways you can do this. So in File Explorer, if you go to the File tab, you will see an option for Open a New Window. Click on that and you'll see it's opened another instance. In this case, it always puts it into the same directory that you started from, so you can see I'm looking at the same directory on both of them. But let's close this for a moment and I'll show you another way to do this. So in the directory you're going from, you can also use the Control key and hold it down and then click the N key. And that as well will open up a new instance of File Explorer. So right now we're showing the same folder on both of these, but what we want to do to be able to move or copy files is to go to the other folder that we want to copy to. So up here in the address bar, you can see that it displays the path of where I am now. So I'm in Documents, Fleming College, W10 Student Data Files, and I'm just down here a couple levels in Chapter 2. If you want to change directories, you can do so using the navigation bar. So I could use the little arrow here and drop it down to show a full list of what's there. But you can see there's a lot of other things here, so it's going to take a lot longer to find it. Instead, I can also use this address bar up here and just click to where I want to go. In this case, I'm going to go back up the path to W10 student data files. And you can see I have a new folder here, W10 new folder, and that's what I'm going to use to put moves and copies into. So I've just clicked to go into that one. Now we're ready to practice moving and copying folders. So the first way to do this is to just simply use a drag and drop method. So in this case, if I wanted to bring this folder over, I would left click on it with my mouse button and just drag it. As I start dragging it, you'll see it says, if I were to drag it downwards, um, it says move to Lin2. So in that case, it would be moving this folder and putting it within the Lin2 folder. But what I'm going to do is drag this across, and now you can see it changes to move to W10 new folder. It's in the right spot. This is where I want it to be. So I can let go of the left mouse button, and you'll see that it appears here. Because this was a move, it's disappeared from the original directory we had it in and only appears over here in our destination. You can also use this method to do copying. So for example, if I wanted to have a copy of this Word 1 document in the other directory, I can do it by holding down the Control key and then dragging it. And you can see it says now copy to W10 chapter 2, which is where it is located. But if I continue dragging across, when I get to my other directory, it's going to change to copy to W10 new folder. I let go of the mouse button, and now it's made a copy. Now you can see that the Word 1 document is here uh, as well as over here. So this has copied it and put it in both locations. You can also do copy and paste as a method for moving files between different folders. In this case, let's try moving my Lin2 folder. So I'm going to highlight that, and then I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut of Control plus the letter C to copy it. And then I'm going to click over in the destination of where I want it to go, which is our W10 new folder. Then I will also use a keyboard shortcut of Control plus the letter V, and you will see that it is now pasted there. When you use copy and paste, your original stays in place and you get a new version. You can also cut. Again, using keyboard commands, cut is Control X. This is equivalent to move. So I'm going to take the Lin3 directory and I'm going to do Control X. And you'll notice that that turned slightly grayer, the file folder icon. This means it is in process of potentially being moved somewhere. Again, I can click on my other directory where I want it to go and also do Control V like you would have done after the Control C for copy. Now you'll see that the Lin3 directory is moved over here. The original version has disappeared because this was a cut and a paste. The third way you can do this is to use the Move To button and the Copy To button, which show up in the ribbon on your Home tab. So if you click Move To, it brings you up a big list of different locations you can go to. As you can see, when you've got a fairly involved file structure, there are many, many things that will show up in here. You can also, at the very bottom, click on Choose Location, and this brings you up something that is a little bit easier to navigate. So we're just going to cancel that. Similarly, Copy To will do the same kind of thing. As you can see, using some of the methods we looked at earlier are the ones that are a little bit easier to use. In addition to moving and copying files, there are also times when you'll want to delete files. Before we show you how to delete files, though, I'd like to talk briefly about the recycle bin. The recycle bin is generally found as an icon on your desktop. It'll have a little garbage can logo, and it will be marked as recycle bin. Windows has a recycle bin for each volume you have. So there will be, for my C drive, it will have its own recycle bin. For my E drive, it will have its own recycle bin. If I delete something on C, it goes to the recycle bin on the C volume. If I delete something on the E volume, it will go to the recycle bin that's on the E volume. They're separate recycle bins. When you delete something in Windows, it's not permanently deleted if you send it to the recycle bin. If you go to the recycle bin, it can still be recovered. So in order to take a look at your recycle bin, if you double click on it, you will see that it opens it up. And you will find that there are a number of different options here in your recycle bin. You'll see that basically this is your File Explorer with a new contextual tab for recycle bin tools opened. And you'll see an option for empty recycle bin. If you do empty your recycle bin, this is where these files become permanently deleted. When you delete files, it keeps putting them in the recycle bin up until a maximum space of what has been allotted for it in your Windows setup. Once it goes over that space, it will start getting rid of the oldest files first. As well, you will see that there are buttons here for restore. Right now, because I don't have a specific thing selected, it just says restore all items. However, if I were to select a specific file, you can now see that I get an option to restore the selected file. So I can restore just that single item. So we'll go out of the recycle bin, but just keep in mind that if you do delete something by mistake, if you have not emptied that recycle bin, you can still get it back. You'll note that this recycle bin looks like it's got paper in it. When you do empty your recycle bin, all of that disappears and it looks like an empty waste paper bin. So we'll talk a little bit then about how to delete files. When you're in File Explorer, if you are on your Home tab, you can see that there is a button called Delete. If you just click on this, it by default, it is going to go into the recycle bin. However, you'll also notice that there is a down arrow, and if you click on the down arrow, you can see that there's an option to recycle, which means it goes to the recycle bin, or you can permanently delete it right here if you so desire. Another way to delete a file is to highlight it and right-click on it. And if you scroll down, you will see that there is an option for delete. If I click on delete, it will bring up a dialog box and it'll say, are you sure you want to move this file to the recycle bin? Click on yes, and the file will disappear. And then another way to delete files is to select them. So in this case, I'll select the Lin1 folder. And I'm just going to use the delete button on my keyboard. And again, it'll prompt me, are you sure you want to move this folder to the recycle bin? I will say yes, and it will disappear. It's important to know how to search for files in File Explorer. This will assist you in locating files and folders, particularly when you have a large and complex file structure. In order to search, we make use of the search bar that shows up here. And you'll see that when I've selected it, there is now a contextual menu available for search tools. So I'm going to click on that to get the search tools menu to show up. And you'll see that there are many options here that will assist you. So I'm going to start off and I'm just going to do a simple search on the word holiday. And you'll see that it's started from where I was located, which was my W10 student data files directory. And it's searched that directory and the subdirectories, and it's found two items. The first is Windows 10 C2 holiday schedule. And then there's also a zip file here. And the reason it's showing up is because this file is also located in the zip file. So even though you have a compressed zip or archive file, Windows is able to take a look in that and say, hey, there's something in there that does have that search term that you are looking for. When you select one of these files, you'll notice that there is a handy button here called Open File Location. And if you click on this, it's going to open up and have highlighted the actual file that you did the search for. This makes it much easier to find your files and avoid you trying to remember, gee, it was 5 levels down a path, how do I get there? You can just go directly there. So I'm going to go back to where I was in the student data files and click on the search tool again and just take a look at some of the options that are available to you when you do these searches. So right now I have selected all subfolders. I could also select current folder. And if I did the same search, you would see that it comes back with no items match my search because there was nothing in that folder itself. Some of the other options you can look at are date modified. So if you want to look at a file that was changed today or yesterday or this week, so you can go back in time to look for certain dates combined with a search term. You can search for specific types of information, calendar entries, emails, links, etc. There's a number of different things you can search there. So again, you can use this to help um, narrow in on what you're searching for. If you remember that what you're searching for was the term holiday and it was in an email, you can use that to help narrow it. You can select a size of a file. So you can, if you knew you had a big attachment associated with it, that might assist you in finding it. And there's other properties. So you can look at things like the type of file it is, or a folder path it's in, or if you have tags associated with it, you can use those. There's also options for recent searches. If you click on the down arrow, you will see that it has a small search history, and it will bring up any items that you've searched on recently. There are also advanced options. This is a good one to be aware of. Um, in here, it allows you to select file contents. So if you know that you had a file and it had a particular phrase in it that you're looking for, you can select file contents and it will look not just at the names of files and folders, but what is actually located within those files. Again, this is something that can help you if you're trying to get to a specific document. Generally, we don't leave file contents selected because it does bring back so many more matches, particularly if it's very common words. But in some instances, that might be of use for you. You can also search for files and folders using Cortana Search. So I'm not going to demonstrate it using it by voice since I have my microphone for recording in use for recording these presentations. That won't work, but I will show you how to do it by typing. So if I were to come into Cortana Search, I'm going to type in the name of one of the files that, or part of the names of one of the files that was in the directories we were working with. So one of them was called Duncan, and there were pictures of a dog called Duncan. So I just typed DUNC, and you can kind of see it's come up with its best guess, which is W10C5 Duncan JPG. It's also showing me a list of files that are photos of Duncan. So it's intelligent enough to pick up not just the name, but tags, etc., associated with the pictures. So using Cortana Search, you can quite easily narrow in on files. And then if you want to open the file, just click on it and that will bring it up for you. When I talked about file extensions, I mentioned the file extensions that are used for archive files. So these, one of the types is .zip or zip files. And it is very frequent that you will hear people talking about zip files because for Windows, of all the archive types, it is the most common. So what's a zip file? It's a compressed archive file with the .zip extension, and it stores multiple files in a single container file. So why would you use that? Well, you can work with the container file as a whole, and it means you can do things like if you were going to download, you can download one file rather than many. It also reduces the size of the file, which would make the download faster. Windows now supports zip files natively. It used to be that you always had to use a special utility app to work with zip files, but it now handles them within Windows itself. Like I say, there are many other compression formats available, but they generally require other applications in order to create and extract them. So If it saves us space, why wouldn't we just zip everything? Well, it behaves similar to a folder, but it's not actually a folder. Uh, Zip folders, when things are compressed in this format, applications may not run properly if they try to use something in this compressed format, because it does actually need to uncompress it to use it. And as well, data may not preview properly when it's in a zip. So zip files are very useful, but it's just a matter of knowing when you can use them and when not. One of the things to note is in the Snap tool, if you decide to go into the ebook and work with any of the exercises and assignments that come out of the ebook, you will need to download the student's files for each of the sections you want to work on. Uh, you can do this from the ebook using that orange link icon and downloading them from the OneDrive associated with the program and the course. However, be aware when they come down, they will be in the compressed zip format. So you will need to extract those files before you can work with them. And we're going to take a look now just briefly at how you compress and uncompress files. It's very easy to work with zip files within File Explorer. In order to extract a zip file, you click on the zip file you want to work with, and you will see in File Explorer that a contextual menu will come up, giving you a number of tools you can use when working with compressed files. In order to extract it, highlight the file you want to extract and just click on the Extract button. A dialog box will come up asking where you want to extract the file. You can just hit extract and it will put it in the same directory, and it will put it in a file folder that's named the same as the zip file, but without the .zip extension. You can also here browse to change the path if you want to save it somewhere else. Or you can also change the name of the file if you want. So if you didn't want to have the file folder be named the same as the zip file, you can change it at this point. If you want to create a zip file, it's very easy to do as well. In this case, what you want to do is select the files and or folders that you want to zip using it in File Explorer. And then click on the Share tab of File Explorer. You'll see the button for zip, and all you have to do is click on that. A zip file will be created, and by default it will be in an edit mode where you can change the name of the file. So you can either press enter to accept the default name it assigned it, which will be the first file in the zip file, the name of it, or you can change it to be whatever else you want. Hit enter to accept the file name, and you're done. And before we finish up today, we're just going to talk briefly about both OneDrive and Office Online, just to give you a bit of introduction to them, and then you can explore them as well later on your own. We're going to mention OneDrive. OneDrive is an example of a cloud storage system, and this is a type of storage solution that is becoming increasingly popular. OneDrive is Microsoft's flavor of it, but there are other services out there, such as Dropbox, who are competitors in this space. So, what is a cloud storage system? It gives you secured online storage for your files, and you can access those files from any computing device with internet access. So rather than always having to worry about carrying your data around on a USB stick to try to make sure it's in sync between, for example, what's on your school computer and your home computer, if you save your files in a cloud storage solution like this, you work on your file at school, you log out, you go home. If you want to continue working, You log into your system at home and access OneDrive, and you can continue working with that file just as you left it when you left school. Every Microsoft account does come with a certain amount of free storage space in OneDrive, and you can also purchase additional space if that's something you need. OneDrive can be found in your File Explorer navigation plan, so you will see an actual entry there for OneDrive. Um, and by default, OneDrive content syncs to a folder on your local hard drive. So although it's up in the cloud, it also syncs down to your local hard drive. And so what that does for you is it lets you access the content if the internet becomes unavailable. And if you access OneDrive information from another device, it's just the most current copy is always going to be available to you. So this is something very useful if you find you're working on a variety of devices and in a variety of locations. I'm now in File Explorer, and I've gone into OneDrive on my File Explorer. So this is a copy of the documents that are local on my hard drive. If I were to make any changes to documents here in my local OneDrive, for example, if I were to do new and do a new worksheet, and I'm going to call this OneDrive test, uh, and click enter to save that, that will now in the background synchronize to OneDrive in the cloud. If you then need to access the contents of your OneDrive and you're at a location where you don't have those files synchronized locally, you can do so via a web browser. So I'm going to bring up Chrome here, and I'm already at onedrive.live.com, which is where you need to go if you want to use OneDrive on the web. And I'm going to click on Sign In. And you enter the email address and click on Next. And then it's going to come up and ask you for your Microsoft ID and then your password. So you click on Sign In. And now I'm in OneDrive on the web. The same items are located here as were in my hard drive. So if I were to click back to File Explorer to take a look, and I'll just move this over a little bit, you can see I have documents, email attachments, music, pictures, a Word document called Group Activity, a OneNote document, and the new Excel spreadsheet that I just created. You can create new files here, and you can also upload files from the computer. You can also select a file and then download it. You can move it, copy it, rename it. So this gives you a fair bit of flexibility when working with your files in the cloud storage location. The other item I wanted to talk to you about here was Office Online. Uh, Microsoft Office, which we will be exploring in some depth throughout this course, is also available in an online version and accessible through OneDrive. Now, these versions are not quite as full featured as the full desktop versions. However, if you want to do some quick editing, Office Online can be very useful. To access it, you go up here in your OneDrive and select the New button and click the down arrow, and it's going to give you the option of if you wanted to create a folder, but also Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. You will notice that not all Microsoft Office products are here. So for example, Microsoft Access is not here, but your basic tools are here. I'm going to click on Word document, and you can see it's starting up Microsoft Word Online. And this will look very similar once we get working with Word to how it is set up in the actual full application. There are a number of the same features, And like I say, this is a great way to do quick edits when you're on the move. This module has given you a bit of an introduction to Microsoft Windows 10, as well as how to manage your files and folders in a more efficient manner, and also provided you with a brief introduction to both OneDrive and Office Online. Looking forward on our to-do list, um, we are hoping to have the Snap tool in at the Fleming bookstore towards the beginning of the week. That being the case, once it does come in, there are a number of things to do from this week. There are learning activities for chapters 1, 2, and 4, which relate to the content we covered this week. As well, there is going to be a lab for this week. The date that that will be due is to be determined. I will be changing it from what it was originally listed as being, just depending on when that tool comes in. I want to make sure I leave you guys sufficient time to both catch up on the previous weeks and to handle this before it becomes due. When the tool does become available, again, like most weeks, there's optional reading in the Windows 10 and Microsoft Edge ebook that is within the Snap tool. If you feel like you want to do additional reading on the topics we covered today, chapters 1, 2, and 4 will help you along with that. And then I've just put up into D2L, there is a Word document up there for Module 3 on screenshots. There are times when it's very useful to be able to do screenshots and insert them into documents. So this is just a little handout for you that will give you some instruction on how to handle the screenshots. So hopefully you've gotten a fair bit out of this presentation, and I will see you in class next week.